seen the interaction between heat and moisture and the movement of air. And the other issue that we want to deal with is basically particles. And we've touched on some of that because all of this is interrelated. And there's several issues with particles. The first thing we like to do is we like to keep particles out of the house. And what are some of the ways to do that? The stuff that's brought into the house, what are some of the ways to keep it out of the house? No, that's dealing with it after it's in the house. Keeping it out of the house. You got your gloves on, you're pretty serious.
I've been pushing them.
Of the house. Okay, so it's leaving the clothing, boots, and work clothes and that outside. What's another way to do it?
Take your shoes off.
Take your shoes off. What's another way to do it?
Wash your hands.
Well, I'm talking about dirt. Yeah, but yes, but a floor mat, a doormat, wipe your feet off. These aren't exotic questions I'm asking here. Okay, another thing is, with the air movement, which brings in more air? More dirt. If I open the transom over the door or leave the crack on the door, if I'm going to draw air in, which is going to draw more dirt in with it? Right. It's going to draw more dirt in if it's pulling air under the door across the porch than it is from the air above it. So we know air out, and we know we want replacement air in, so we like to control the replacement air. Obviously, if you have an air conditioner, that controls it and gets rid of the dust to some extent. If you have a forced air system, how do you get rid of a lot of the dust? With a filter. And how many years do you wait till you change a filter? What? Once a month might be a little pushy. If you got somebody that's really asthmatic, maybe, but every 3 months. And then it's better to get the filters. It's much better to get the filters that have these sort of accordion folds, the white filters, than the fiberglass filters. So having a high quality filter, particularly if you got an asthmatic kid, is important. So the first thing you want to do is keep as much stuff out of the house as possible. If you have pets, and particularly pets that run around outside and come into the house, you're going to bring a lot of stuff in. Anything, any animals, dogs, cats, that go from the outside inside are going to drag stuff in, and we're going to drag stuff in. So the first principle is that you really want to keep dust out of the house. You want to keep as many particles out of the house. Now, but stuff's going to get into the house. So that's why not only keeping it clean, but cleanable is important. How would people feel if, when they came into the house, the baby came over to them and licked the bottom of their shoe? You say that that's disgusting, right? Now, how about if every time you came into the house, you took the bottom of your shoe and wiped the bottom of your shoe off on the wall-to-wall carpet year after year after year after year, and the baby crawled around in the carpet and put their sticky little hands in the carpet and put it in. What's the difference? Well, one is more direct than the other, but the consequences are identical. Whatever is on the bottom of your shoe, I guarantee goes into the carpet. And whatever is on the carpet, I guarantee that a kid crawling around on the floor with their sticky little hands, they're going to put their hands in their mouth and they're going to put whatever's on the carpet in their mouth. How do you keep wall-to-wall carpet clean? How often? Almost daily. The answer kind of is that if you don't have servants, you don't keep wall-to-wall carpet clean. If you don't have money, You need money for three reasons. You get high quality, you change your wall-to-wall carpeting every 3 or 4 years, and you vacuum it almost every day. Low-income families do not have that option. Low-income families, I go into houses and I'm 15 years old. Now, if you had a baby, imagine keeping a rag next to the kid's bed for 15 years without ever putting it in the washing machine. You would never do that, but you would cover your house with a piece of cloth that can't be cleaned well. How many people have ever ripped up 10-year-old wall-to-wall underneath? It is disgusting. And so when you vacuum, all that bad stuff is getting sucked up and becoming available to the children that's crawling around. So the vacuum only works if you vacuum so often that the dust never gets a chance to settle into the structure and into the padding of the carpet. Is that you tear up wall-to-wall carpeting and you never put wall-to-wall carpeting down in anybody's house unless they vacuum daily, always take their shoes off when they come in, and change the wall-to-wall carpeting with some frequency. And now, that's a difficult thing to do. People get very attached to their wall-to-wall carpeting. Historically, the size of the rug in your house reflected your wealth. So if you were very poor, you were lucky to have one of those rag throw rugs. And if you were enormously wealthy, you could afford a rug that was so big it filled the whole room up. But even wealthy people picked the rug up every single season and hung it. It was a series of strips, 31 inches wide, that were sewn together by the servants or slaves with these big curved needles every single spring and fall. And that's how wealthy people could have wall-to-wall carpeting. Wealthy people wouldn't dream of leaving wall-to-wall carpeting down in 2 seasons. There was a summer carpet, and the things got cleaned immaculately in between. When it became cheaper, it became a status symbol, particularly with lower income people, and now wealthy people tend to have hardwood floors with beautiful oriental rugs in the middle of them, or a couple of them that they can pick up. And how did our grandmothers clean these rugs? Put them outside on the clothesline where it got a lot of air, where it got a lot of sun, and they beat the hell out of them with a tool that looked like that. And then they stored them, and then they put the summer rugs down, and so forth. You don't want sinks. You do not want things that gather dust, because you can't keep it clean. And the lower the people's income is, and the more pressure they're under to not have time to clean well, the more cleanable you want the surfaces. So you don't want wall-to-wall carpeting. You don't want the accumulation of stuff down here. You really want smooth and cleanable floors. And the way you clean becomes important. So when you have a situation and you're going to mop the floor, you take one of these sponge mops that has the little arm where the piece of metal comes down over the mop, and you squeeze that sponge out into the bucket, and you put your detergent in there, and you mop the floor. Do we have a problem with this? Right, this isn't cleaning the house, this is dirtying the house. Because why would it be that a wet mop or a wet sponge could be dirtier the next time you use it than when you stop using it? How could it literally get dirtier while it was sitting in the closet? Right? You're close. I leave it in the closet. I leave a wet mop in the closet overnight. Mold. I have this giant Petri dish. It's full of all the organic stuff that I've mopped up. Food's there, water's there, it's dark, no sun. Petri dish. Enormous mold growth. How many people here can smell mold when they walk into a house? How many people here can smell a cockroach infestation? Man, it's an evil smell. Once you know what that is, it is an evil smell. My brother, who's bright, fairly bright, he's a lawyer. He's still fairly bright. And his kid's asthmatic, and he loves his kid. And I walk into the house, and mold hits me in the face, and I say to him, "Where's your mop?" He says, "What do you mean, where's my mop?" I said, "You got a moldy mop in here. I can smell it." When I do housing investigations, the most critical moment for that investigation is the first 3 minutes, because the instrument that I have that's more sensitive than any other instrument is this. The first thing I do, because as soon as you're in there 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you lose sensitivity. You learn a lot through the first few minutes. You learn the dogs in the basement, if the house is moldy, if there's cockroaches, if there's fresh air in the house, if they're cooking and not venting the house out. This is a really bad system. This is a house dirtying system. And because you are contaminating your detergent, you are contaminating your rinse water, you are picking up your dirty water and you are putting it back up. And the way these mops are done is that this mop, when you put that little piece of metal down, what it does is it squeezes out the water and traps all the dirt on the surface. This is one of the dumbest designs I've ever seen. It literally captures the dirt and gets rid of the water. What you want is to get rid of the dirt. So the system you want is a 3-container system. One of the simplest ways to do it is to get a bucket that has 2 sections, and you get one of those little spray bottles, and if you're doing this commercially, you can use a pump bucket like that, these little spray bottles, and you put your detergent in there. So your detergent is here, and this never gets contaminated because you can't fit the mop through that little hole there. This is full of a lot of rinse water, which you throw out very, very frequently, and you use a string mop. Somebody actually took the time to compare the surface area, the total surface area of a string mop compared to the surface area of a sponge mop. The number, which I wish I could remember, but it was really big. Enormous surface area and the mop for residential use, because you don't have those big buckets, that works well is the twist mops, where you twist it and it stays there, and then you can twist it again because it has a little ratchet thing on it. Those, if you're going to hand out mops for your program, and I would always hand out mops for my program, a double bucket, a Mr. bottle, a mop head, and you get the ones that ratchet and that you can replace the mop head, and you give people several mop heads. And you change the rinse water. Huh? And you can wash, yeah, you can wash them in hot water, but you can rinse them out, and you wind up, and then where do you put the mop when you're done mopping? Outside. You open the window, you stick it out. Somebody said, but that's so ghetto, which I'll grant. Which I'll grant, but nonetheless, it's a really good idea. It's a really good idea to stick that thing out. You got air, you got it kills the mold, it dries the mops out. You bring the mop in when it's bone dry, and then you put it away. Never put a wet mop away. I spend a lot of time on that because the best way to clean the house is to damp mop the house. So you want the rugs up, you want to damp mop the house, you want things that go outside. The sun is one of the best ways. The combination of warmth and the sunlight, the ultraviolet rays, and the movement of air outside is the best thing you can do. And ideally, you have 2 clotheslines, so you put stuff over that. Columbia, Maryland has a law against clotheslines. Imagine a law against clotheslines. What kind of country do we live in that we have laws against clotheslines? It gives a sense of our priorities. Being able to keep the dust out to begin with, not having sinks, not having places the dust can get into, and being able to clean is really important. Now, the other thing, of course, is that vacuum cleaners with decent filters, they don't have to be HEPA-Vacs. Just for your information, HUD no longer requires HEPA-Vacs, even for lead work. It says that they have to be a vacuum, a HEPA-Vac or a vacuum of equal efficacy, that is efficiency. So one of the programs that I strongly support is basically giving people a $150 kit. It's a very, very cheap program. It includes a Hoover vacuum cleaner with a Micron filter, a double bucket, a bunch of mops, some detergent, and by the way, you don't want detergents, you don't want people using bleaches, and you don't want them using stuff that you would be terrified of. There's stuff that is so benign you can drink it. You don't need to clean house with toxic. One of the places that I look for, talking about the gathering of evil things, is that one of the first places I open up is the doors under the sink in the lower cabinet. And you wind up with a collection of Black Flag and detergents that are designed to clean the grease off commercial kitchens and mouse shit and dead roaches. And it's one of the evilest spots in the world underneath the sink because it's paradise. It's some combination of poisons and a comfortable place for critters to live. You really want all that stuff thrown away. You don't want poisons in the house. You have these fierce detergents that'll cut through, 3 inches of grease. You really want to distribute to people very, very benign cleaning material. And there's lots of company that makes it. The problem is that if you go out to buy it yourself, you can't find it. And so Health and Housing Department would be wonderful if everybody was supplied with a cleaning kit. So that's basically the soil. You want cleanable surfaces. You want to keep the dust out. Once it gets in, you want to be able to clean it well. Whatever it gets on, you want to be able to put in the sun and put outside. And you want to lower the dust level as much as possible. Just one more thing, one more list I'd just like to quickly go through is that you also want people to be able to deal with problems in the house. So you want to be able to have people, everybody who you talk to in the house should know, every single family member should know how to shut certain things off, which are what? They should be able to shut off the water coming into the house, the gas coming into the house, the electric coming into the house, okay? So they should be able to shut those things off and be able to shut down the furnace. Number one. The things that should always be running in the house is that you do want a CO alarm, but you want the kind of CO alarm that logs the peak level. UL won't allow you to have an alarm that alarms lower than this, so you want a CO alarm that logs the level, so when you push a button, you see what the highest carbon monoxide level was during the period of time that it's been logging it. So although the alarm doesn't go off, at least you can inform yourself, and you train people how to do that. What the problem is, you want to make sure people's smoke alarms work, you want to make sure that there's a decent ventilation system in the house. You want to make sure that there's a fire extinguisher in the house that is outside the kitchen, because that's the place, it's by the kitchen door. You really want a fire extinguisher by the kitchen door. And you want to, if they have a sump pump or something in the basement, or if they have a dehumidifier, you want to make sure those things are working. So that becomes really critical.
The dust issue. Is it so much that there is dust, or is what the dust is made of anymore? Because dust has been around forever. People had dirt floors at one time. They were so clean. And they had wood floors. They didn't have all these ways of cleaning. And I'm just wondering if the asthma trigger is not so much that there is dust, but what's in the dust these days.
It is absolutely what's in the dust. Well, first of all, the dirt floors were tamped down, and they weren't a fine dust. The dirt itself maintained a moisture, and so it wasn't a fine airborne dust that was there. It's the fine airborne dust that's really bad, particularly, and they tended not to bring a bunch of animals into the house. So we have cats in the house. We have cat dander, which is a problem. You didn't have a lot of roaches in the house, but there's a whole category that didn't exist, which is the urea formaldehydes, which is the polyvinyl chlorides, which is all of these chemicals that are really deadly. So you wind up with it isn't just the dust. You're right. It's the lead paint in it. It's the asbestos in it. It's the stuff that's accumulated. You get heavy metals. If you're in an old house, when you open the walls, there's this silky black powder. What's that from? Pitch black, silky black powder in the wall cavities. 100-year-old house. Coal dust. Because the house was originally heated by coal. And remember, these houses inhale, stuff gets trapped in the wall. It doesn't come out as easy as it goes in. And so you're right, it's the content of the dust a whole lot. It isn't dirt per se. Kids can play in the dirt. It's not a problem. The dust that comes in the house gets dried out, becomes airborne, and wind up being full of chemicals. And then, of course, cars have turned all of the dust into a fairly toxic substance, both when there was lead and now there isn't lead, but there's still so much in the residue from the gases, so you wind up with this pretty fierce mixture. So you're right, that it isn't so much cleanliness as what you're cleaning. Other questions? Let me ask you a question. Is there parts of this presentation that you would like me to go through quicker? Or is there parts that you would like me to spend more detail on? Because one of the things we're doing is evaluating this presentation. More time, less time, about right? Is there a place that you'd like more detail that I went over too fast that comes to mind? Or how about less detail or less stories? Or so it's about right? Yes? Okay.